Choose your life, or save the creature everyone calls a monster. The words echoed through the cold valley as Clara Whitmore stood beneath the gray winter sky, facing a choice no one should ever have to make. Around her, the people of Moonvale territory watched in silence. They expected fear. They expected hesitation. They expected the Omega they had always underestimated to finally choose herself. For years, Clara had been known as the girl who was too gentle for a harsh world. She was an Omega without a powerful family, without a famous name, and without the influence that many believed was necessary to survive. People often mistook her kindness for weakness. They saw her quiet voice and assumed she had no courage. But they never understood that courage was not always loud. Sometimes, it was the quiet decision to do what was right when nobody else would. Beyond the old stone gates of the valley stood the creature everyone feared. They called him the Beast. Stories had spread across kingdoms about the mysterious figure hidden among the mountains. Some said he was dangerous. Some said he had no place among civilized beings. But Clara did not see a legend. She saw a lonely soul who had been abandoned. She saw someone who needed help. The guards around her waited for her answer. The choice seemed simple to them. Walk away and protect herself, or stay and accept the risk of helping the creature everyone rejected. Clara looked toward the valley. The wind moved through the tall pine trees, carrying the sound of a world that had already decided what the Beast was without ever trying to understand him. Slowly, she stepped forward. I cannot leave someone behind just because others are afraid of him, she said softly. The crowd reacted with surprise. They could not understand why an Omega with so little power would choose compassion over safety. But Clara had never measured a person's worth by their appearance, their title, or the rumors surrounding them. She remembered what it felt like to be judged before anyone knew her heart. She knew what it meant to be treated as if she did not belong. And she refused to make another living being feel the same way. Far from the valley, inside the grand halls of Silvercrest Kingdom, Alpha King Adrian Blackthorn received news of the impossible choice made by an unknown Omega. As the ruler of the kingdom, Adrian had spent years hearing stories about the Beast. His duty was to understand every threat that could affect his people. But when he heard that one young woman had chosen to stand beside the creature instead of abandoning him, something about the story caught his attention. He expected to find fear. He expected to find desperation. He did not expect to find compassion. Adrian traveled toward Moonvale territory, unaware that the decision he was about to witness would change the way he saw strength forever. Because the person everyone believed was the weakest had just shown the kind of courage even a king could not ignore. And the creature everyone feared was about to reveal a secret that would change the fate of them all. Clara Whitmore had expected fear to follow her decision. She expected people to question her. She expected the whispers that had followed her throughout her life to become even louder. But as she stepped deeper into the quiet valley, she realized something important. For the first time in years, she was not walking forward because someone told her what she should do. She was walking forward because her heart had already made the choice. The creature known as the Beast remained hidden beneath the shadows of the ancient forest, watching her carefully. Clara could feel the distance between them. She could feel the uncertainty. He had spent so long being feared that even kindness seemed unfamiliar to him. But Clara did not approach with suspicion. She did not approach with expectations. She simply approached with understanding. I am not here to hurt you, she said softly. I only want to know the truth. The valley became quiet. The world seemed to hold its breath. Clara noticed small details that others had ignored. The Beast did not act like the creature from the stories. There was no sign of the terrifying image people had created in their minds. Instead, she saw someone who carried loneliness like a heavy burden. Someone who had been judged without ever being heard. Clara understood that feeling more than anyone. Back in Moonvale territory, people had always decided who she was before they knew her. They saw an Omega without status and assumed she had nothing valuable to offer. They saw gentleness and mistook it for weakness. But Clara knew the truth. A gentle heart could still be brave. As the hours passed, Clara stayed near the forest and refused to leave. She shared the small amount of food she carried and spoke calmly, even when she received no response. She did not ask for gratitude. She did not ask to be rewarded. She simply wanted the beast to understand that not everyone in the world had come to judge him. Meanwhile, Alpha King Adrian Blackthorn arrived at the border of Moonvale territory. His journey had been quiet, but his thoughts were not. For years, he had been taught that a ruler must separate emotion from duty. He believed every mystery needed to be solved with logic and every danger needed to be controlled. Yet the story of Clara Whitmore challenged everything he thought he knew. When Adrian reached the valley, he remained hidden at first. He wanted to see the truth with his own eyes. He expected to find a frightened Omega who had made a reckless decision. Instead, he saw something completely different. He saw Clara sitting near the forest, speaking to the beast with the same patience she would show any living being. She did not know who Adrian was. She did not know that a king was watching her. She did not know that her choice had already reached the highest halls of Silvercrest Kingdom. And that was exactly what surprised him most. Clara was not trying to impress anyone. She was not searching for recognition. She was simply being herself. Adrian watched quietly and felt something change inside him. The strongest people he had met were often those who demanded respect. But Clara was different. She earned respect without asking for it. As the evening sky painted the valley with golden light, Adrian finally stepped forward. Clara turned and looked at the stranger approaching from the path. Neither of them knew that this meeting would become the beginning of a story that would challenge an entire kingdom's understanding of strength, loyalty, and the meaning of a true heart. Adrian Blackthorn stepped into the valley with a calm expression, but Clara Whitmore immediately noticed the difference between him and the people who had come before. He did not look at the beast with fear or suspicion. He did not look at Clara as if she had made a foolish choice. Instead, he looked at the scene carefully, as if he was trying to understand something others had already decided was impossible. "You are the Alpha King," Clara said softly when she recognized the royal symbol on his cloak. Adrian nodded. "And you are the Omega who stayed." Clara looked back toward the forest. "I only did what I believed was right." Those simple words surprised him. Many people in his position would have explained their actions, defended themselves, or searched for praise. Clara did none of those things. She acted as if kindness required no reward. Adrian had spent years meeting people who wanted the attention of the crown. But this young woman seemed completely unaware that her actions had already reached the highest level of the kingdom. "Do you know what they say about him?" Adrian asked, referring to the beast. Clara remained quiet for a moment. "I know what they say. But I also know that rumors do not tell the whole story." Adrian studied her carefully. "You believe you understand him?" Clara looked toward the forest. "No. I believe he deserves the chance to be understood." Those words stayed with Adrian. He had expected many answers when he arrived at Moonvale territory. He expected explanations. He expected fear. He never expected a simple statement that would challenge everything he had learned about judgment and power. As the evening continued, Adrian remained near the valley. He wanted to learn more before making any decision. The safety of his kingdom was his responsibility, but he also knew that responsibility required truth, not assumptions. Clara continued speaking gently to the beast. Slowly, the distance between them began to disappear. She discovered small signs that revealed a different story from the one everyone knew. The beast was not the heartless creature described in old tales. There was intelligence in his silence. There was sadness behind his isolation. There was a reason he remained hidden from the world. Adrian noticed something else as well. Clara was not fearless. She had moments of uncertainty. She knew the situation was unusual. She knew others might never understand her choice. But she continued because she believed abandoning someone simply because they were different was wrong. That was what impressed him most. Courage was not the absence of fear. It was choosing compassion even when fear was present. Later that night, Adrian and Clara sat near the edge of the valley, watching the stars appear above the mountains. "You are different from what I expected," Adrian admitted. Clara smiled slightly. "I have heard that before. People often misunderstand what they do not take the time to see," he said. Clara looked at him. "Maybe that is why so many people are lonely." The answer was simple, but it carried a truth Adrian could not ignore. For the first time in many years, the Alpha King found himself questioning the beliefs he had inherited. The world had taught him to look for strength in titles, armies, and authority. Yet the strongest person he had encountered was an Omega standing in a quiet valley, choosing kindness when nobody expected her to. But as Adrian prepared to uncover the truth behind the beast, he knew one thing clearly. Whatever secret waited beneath the rumors, Clara Whitmore had already revealed something far more important. She had shown him that the heart could recognize truth long before the eyes could see it. The morning sun slowly reached the valley, painting the mountains of Moonvale territory with warm golden light. For the first time in many years, Alpha King Adrian Blackthorn stood in a place where the rules of the kingdom felt distant. There were no grand halls, no advisors waiting for his decisions, and no expectations placed upon every word he spoke. There was only the quiet forest, Clara Whitmore, and the mystery that had brought him there. Clara continued caring for the beast with the same patience she had shown from the beginning. She did not ask about his past. She did not demand answers. She simply offered the one thing he had clearly been missing for a long time, someone willing to see beyond the rumors. Adrian watched carefully, noticing details that others had ignored. The creature everyone feared did not behave like the stories described. There was no sign of the cruel nature people had imagined. Instead, there was a deep sense of loneliness, as if the beast had spent years hiding from a world that refused to understand him. "The stories about him are incomplete," Adrian finally said. Clara looked at him. "Most stories are incomplete when they are told by people who never listened." Her words made him pause. They were simple, but they carried a truth he could not dismiss. Adrian had always believed information was the foundation of leadership. But now he realized that information without understanding could still create unfair judgments. Together, Adrian and Clara began searching through old records from Moonvale territory. They wanted to discover where the stories about the beast had truly begun. In an abandoned archive beneath the village hall, they found forgotten documents that had been hidden for generations. The records described a mysterious guardian who had once protected the lands surrounding the kingdom. The description did not match the frightening tales that had spread over time. It described someone who had sacrificed his own freedom to protect others. Clara read the words carefully, her expression filled with surprise. So everyone remembered the fear, but they forgot the reason behind it. Adrian looked at the old pages. It seems that happened more than once. Those words carried more meaning than he intended. Clara noticed the change in him. The Alpha King who arrived in the valley searching for answers was beginning to see the world differently. He was no longer simply trying to confirm whether the beast was a danger. He was trying to understand the truth. As they continued their search, Clara noticed something about Adrian as well. Behind the confidence of the Alpha King was someone who carried a heavy responsibility. Everyone expected him to always have the right answer. Everyone expected him to remain powerful and certain. But Clara saw moments when he questioned himself. "You know," she said quietly, "it must be difficult when everyone expects you to never make mistakes." Adrian looked surprised by her observation. "Most people do not ask how the person wearing the crown feels." Clara smiled gently. "Maybe they should." For a moment, the two stood in silence. They were very different people. One was a king surrounded by power. The other was an Omega who had spent years being ignored. Yet somehow, they understood each other in a way neither had expected. As evening approached, they returned to the valley where the beast waited. Adrian looked toward the forest, knowing that the truth they discovered could change everything. The kingdom had built an entire belief around fear. But now he had seen another possibility. Maybe the greatest mistake was not trusting the beast. Maybe the greatest mistake was refusing to look deeper. And as Adrian prepared to reveal what he had learned, he realized that the woman standing beside him had already changed the way he viewed the world forever. The truth hidden within the old records changed the way Adrian Blackthorne looked at the valley. For years, the kingdom had repeated the same stories about the beast until those stories became accepted as fact. But now, standing beside Clara Whitmore, the Alpha King understood that fear had created a version of reality that was never complete. Clara noticed the silence between them as they returned to the forest. "You are thinking about what you will tell your kingdom," she said. Adrian looked toward the mountains. "Yes. Because once people believe something for many years, changing their minds is not simple." Clara nodded. She understood that better than anyone. She had spent most of her life being judged by people who never took the time to know her. "Then tell them the truth," she said. "Even if it takes time for them to accept it." Adrian looked at her with quiet admiration. She spoke about difficult things with such calmness that it almost seemed effortless. But he knew it was not effortless. It came from years of being misunderstood and still choosing kindness. When they returned to the village, the people of Moonvale territory immediately noticed the change in Adrian. The Alpha King who had arrived searching for a threat now carried the expression of someone searching for understanding. The villagers gathered as he explained that the old stories about the beast were missing important details. Some people listened carefully. Others struggled to accept that everything they believed could be wrong. Clara stood quietly nearby. She did not demand that anyone trust her. She did not ask them to apologize for their doubts. She simply allowed the truth to speak for itself. Later that evening, Adrian visited the village archives once more. He wanted to understand why the original records had disappeared from public knowledge. What he discovered surprised him. The forgotten history of the beast had not vanished by accident. Over time, people had chosen to remember only the parts that supported their fears. The stories had changed because fear was easier to spread than understanding. Adrian closed the old book and felt a deeper responsibility than before. A king was not only responsible for protecting people from danger. A king was also responsible for protecting them from false beliefs. Meanwhile, Clara spent time near the forest with the beast. She had noticed small changes since Adrian arrived. There was a quiet trust forming between them. The beast no longer seemed as distant as before. Clara realized that sometimes the hardest thing for someone who had been rejected was not receiving help. It was believing they deserved it. As night covered the valley, Adrian joined Clara near the edge of the forest. The stars above them reflected against the calm landscape. "You know," Adrian said, "most people would have chosen the easier path." Clara looked at him. "Maybe. But easy does not always mean right." Adrian smiled softly. "That is something I am beginning to understand." For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply watched the peaceful valley around them. The Alpha King had come searching for a creature everyone feared. Instead, he found a truth that challenged everything he knew. And beside that truth stood an Omega who had shown him that compassion was not weakness. It was a strength powerful enough to change hearts. But as Adrian prepared to bring this truth back to Silvercrest Kingdom, he knew the greatest challenge was still ahead. Convincing the kingdom to see beyond the legend of the beast would require more than words. It would require courage, patience, and the willingness to choose understanding over fear. The journey from Moonvale territory to Silvercrest Kingdom felt different from the moment Adrian Blackthorne began to return. Before leaving the valley, he looked back at the quiet forest where Clara Whitmore had made a choice that changed everything. He had arrived searching for answers about the beast, but he was leaving with a deeper understanding of something far more important. Sometimes the truth was not hidden because it was impossible to find. Sometimes it was hidden because people were afraid to look. Clara traveled beside Adrian toward the royal capital, uncertain about what awaited them. She had never belonged in places filled with powerful people and ancient traditions. The grand halls of Silvercrest were a world far away from the simple life she knew in Moonvale. "Are you worried about what they will say?" Adrian asked as they traveled along the snowy road. Clara looked out at the mountains passing by. A little. I know how quickly people decide who someone is. Adrian understood those words. He had seen the same thing happen throughout his life. People judged others by their titles, their families, and their reputation before learning their true character. When they arrived at Silvercrest Kingdom, the news spread quickly. The Alpha King had returned, and he had brought the Omega who stood beside the beast. The royal council gathered immediately. They expected Adrian to explain why he had protected something the kingdom had feared for generations. They expected him to announce that the old stories were true. Instead, Adrian presented the forgotten records from Moonvale territory. He showed them the history that had been ignored for years. We have allowed fear to become our truth, Adrian said before the council. But a kingdom cannot be guided by fear alone. It must be guided by wisdom and fairness. Some advisors remained uncertain. They had spent their entire lives believing the old legends. Changing their beliefs in a single moment was not easy. Clara understood that. She did not expect everyone to accept the truth immediately. She only hoped they would be willing to question what they had always assumed. During the following days, Clara remained in the palace while Adrian continued his efforts to reveal the forgotten history of the beast. She noticed something about the kingdom. Many people were not cruel. They were simply afraid of something they did not understand. That realization gave her hope. She knew what it felt like to be judged unfairly, and she knew change required patience. One afternoon, Adrian found Clara in the palace gardens. She was watching the snow slowly cover the flowers. "You are thinking about leaving," he said. Clara looked surprised. "How did you know?" Adrian smiled. "Because you always think about what is best for others before yourself." Clara lowered her eyes. "I do not want my presence to create more problems for you." Adrian stepped closer, his voice calm. "You still believe you are a burden because people once treated you that way." His words touched something deep inside her. For years, Clara had accepted the idea that she was someone who took up too much space. But Adrian saw her differently. He saw someone whose kindness had changed the path of an entire kingdom. "Clara," he said, "you did not create this challenge. You revealed the truth that was already there." Those words stayed with her. For the first time, she began to believe that maybe she was not simply someone who helped others. Maybe she was someone who deserved to be valued too. But as the kingdom prepared for the final announcement about the beast and the forgotten history, a new question began spreading through Silvercrest. If Clara had changed the Alpha King's understanding of strength, what place would she have in the future of the kingdom? The days following Adrian Blackthorn's return to Silvercrest Kingdom became a turning point for everyone within the palace walls. The story of the beast was no longer a distant rumor from the mountains. It had become a question that forced the kingdom to look at itself. For generations, people had believed that fear was the safest answer. Now they had to decide whether understanding could be stronger than fear. Clara Whitmore watched these changes quietly. She never expected to become part of such an important moment. She was still the same Omega who lived a simple life in Moonvale territory. She still valued small acts of kindness, quiet mornings, and helping those who needed support. But now, every decision she made was being watched by people who once believed she had nothing important to offer. One morning, Adrian invited Clara to attend a gathering with the people of Silvercrest. He wanted the kingdom to hear the truth directly, not through rumors or old stories. As they entered the great hall, Clara felt the familiar feeling she had carried for years. The feeling of being judged before she even spoke. But this time was different. She was not standing there as someone asking to be accepted. She was standing there as someone who had already shown her heart through her actions. Adrian stepped forward and addressed the gathered crowd. "A kingdom cannot grow if it refuses to learn from the past," he said. "For too long, we allowed a story built on fear to replace the truth." He explained what he had discovered in Moonvale territory. He shared the forgotten history of the beast and the reasons behind the misunderstanding that had lasted for generations. The hall remained quiet as people listened. Some were surprised. Some were uncertain. But many began to see the situation differently. Then Adrian turned toward Clara. The first person to question the story was not a warrior, not a noble, and not someone seeking recognition. It was an Omega who chose compassion when the easier choice was to walk away. Clara felt the attention of the entire room, but she remained calm. She did not need to defend herself. Her actions had already spoken. After the gathering, many people approached her with questions. Some apologized for judging her too quickly. Others simply thanked her for reminding them that every person deserved to be understood. Clara accepted their words with humility. She knew change did not happen in one day, but she also knew that every change began with someone willing to take the first step. Later that evening, Adrian and Clara walked through the palace gardens. The quiet paths reminded Clara of the valley where their journey had started. "You changed this kingdom," Adrian said. Clara shook her head gently. "No. I only made one choice." Adrian smiled. "Sometimes one choice is enough to change everything." Clara looked at him. "You are different from when we first met." Adrian thought about his journey. He had entered Moonvale searching for something dangerous. Instead, he found a truth that challenged everything he believed about leadership. "I learned that a king should not only protect his people from what they fear," he said. "A king should help them understand what they do not know." Their conversation was interrupted by a message from the royal archives. New information had been discovered about the beast's past, information that could finally reveal why the legend had been misunderstood for so many years. Adrian looked at Clara, knowing another important moment was approaching. The truth had already changed the kingdom's present. Now, it was about to reveal the secrets of its past. The discovery inside the royal archives changed everything Adrian Blackthorne thought he knew about the history of Silvercrest Kingdom. The forgotten documents revealed a story that had been buried beneath years of misunderstanding. The beast was never the danger people believed him to be. The truth was far more complicated. Long ago, the guardian of the mountains had protected the kingdom during a difficult time. His role had been one of responsibility, not fear. But as generations passed, the details disappeared, and the people remembered only the parts that made them afraid. Clara Whitmore listened carefully as the royal historians explained the forgotten records. She felt a deep sadness knowing that someone had carried the weight of being misunderstood for so long. She knew that feeling personally. She knew what it was like to have others decide who you were without ever asking about your heart. Adrian watched her reaction and understood why she had been the first person to see beyond the rumors. Clara did not look at the beast and see a legend. She saw a person who deserved understanding. "The kingdom did not lose the truth because it was hidden," Adrian said quietly. "It lost the truth because no one wanted to look deeper." Clara looked toward the old records. "Sometimes people choose the easiest story instead of the honest one." Her words remained with him. The Alpha King had spent his entire life learning how to make difficult decisions. But this situation taught him something different. Leadership was not only about making decisions quickly. It was about having the patience to seek the truth before judging. When Adrian returned to the royal council, he presented the complete history of the beast. This time, the conversation was different. The council members who once rejected the idea of changing old beliefs began to understand why the truth mattered. They realized that protecting tradition did not mean refusing to learn. It meant preserving the values that made the kingdom stronger. Meanwhile, Clara returned to Moonvale territory with Adrian to help bring the beast into a place where he could finally exist without being defined by fear. The journey was not about proving everyone wrong. It was about creating a future where no one was judged before being understood. When the people of Moonvale saw Clara standing beside the beast and the Alpha King, many remembered the choice she had made in the valley. They remembered that she had chosen compassion when nobody expected her to. That choice had started everything. As the days passed, the kingdom slowly began to change. People who once whispered about the beast began asking questions. People who once ignored Clara began listening to her. She did not become respected because of a royal title. She became respected because she had shown everyone what true courage looked like. One evening, Adrian and Clara stood beneath the same stars they had seen when their journey began. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had walked away that day?" Adrian asked. Clara smiled softly. "Sometimes. But I know I would have regretted leaving someone behind just because the world told me to." Adrian looked at her with admiration. "That choice revealed everything about you." Clara looked toward the peaceful valley. "And it revealed something about you too." He raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "You came looking for a threat. But you were willing to change when you discovered the truth." For a moment, the Alpha King said nothing. Because she was right. A true leader was not someone who never changed their mind. A true leader was someone brave enough to change when the truth demanded it. And as the final pieces of the forgotten history came together, Adrian knew that one final decision remained. The kingdom had learned to see the beast differently. Now, he had to decide how he would honor the woman who had changed the way he saw the world. Years later, the story of Silvercrest Kingdom was still told throughout the lands, but it was no longer remembered as the story of a feared creature or a forgotten Omega. It became the story of a choice. A single moment when Clara Whitmore decided that kindness mattered more than comfort, and that a life should never be judged by the rumors surrounding it. The valley where everything began became a place of peace instead of fear. The old stories about the beast were replaced with the truth, and generations after Clara's decision grew up knowing that understanding was stronger than judgment. Clara never changed the way she lived, even after the entire kingdom recognized her. She still walked through villages, listened to ordinary people, and offered help whenever she could. She never believed that a title made someone valuable. She believed value came from the heart and the choices a person made when nobody was watching. Adrian Blackthorne saw this every day. As Alpha King, he had once believed that protecting a kingdom meant always having the strongest answer. But Clara taught him something different. She showed him that a true leader needed more than authority. A true leader needed compassion. Together, they created a future where people were encouraged to question old beliefs and search for the truth behind every story. The kingdom became a place where people were not defined by where they came from, what others believed about them, or the expectations placed upon them. They were judged by their actions and their character. One evening, many years after their journey through Moonvale territory, Adrian and Clara returned to the valley where their story began. The mountains stood quietly around them, and the forest remained as peaceful as it had been on the day Clara made her impossible choice. "Do you ever think about that first day?" Adrian asked. Clara smiled as she looked across the valley. "I think about it often." "Would you still make the same choice if you knew everything that would happen?" Adrian asked. Clara looked toward the forest and thought for a moment. "Yes. Because the choice was never about what I would gain. It was about what I could not leave behind." Adrian smiled. That was the answer he had always admired. Clara had never helped because she wanted recognition. She had never chosen kindness because she expected a reward. She had chosen it because it was part of who she was. "You know," Adrian said, "when I first came here, I thought I was searching for the truth about the beast." Clara looked at him. "And what did you find?" He smiled softly. "I found that the greatest strength in this world does not always belong to the person with the most power." The valley became quiet as the evening light covered the mountains. Clara remembered the girl she had been before that day. The Omega who believed the world would never truly see her. She wished she could tell that younger version of herself one thing. Being overlooked did not mean being worthless. Being gentle did not mean being weak. And being different did not mean being alone. The kingdom would continue changing long after their time. New generations would hear the story of the Alpha King and the Omega who changed everything. But the lesson would remain the same. True strength was never found in fear, power, or appearances. It was found in the courage to choose kindness when the world expected something else. And that was why the woman once underestimated by everyone became the person who reminded an entire kingdom what it truly meant to have a heart.